Welcome back to Darnell Grant Economics, and today we are continuing our look at classical economics. This is part 2 to that first video we have. Today we are going to focus and look at the long-run aggregate supply curve. We're going to look at how this long-run aggregate supply curve interacts with the short-run aggregate supply curve. All of that today.
Nice like a fight.
We start at the long-run aggregate supply curve. Now, let's think back a bit. Classical economists separated two time periods. One referred to as the short run, one is the long run. And what they stated is that in the long run, our aggregate supply turns into a perfectly vertical curve, compared to the past where our short run aggregate supply curve was an upward sloping curve. Now in the long run, despite whatever price level you charge, the output is going to remain the same. The economy is producing its full employment level of output. Meaning, let's just say for some instance, we're operating at full employment level of output in the long run, and someone says, you know what, I'm going to give you more money to produce this.
A long strip's a short strip.
Or, come on, produce 100 more units and I'm going to pay you $50 million.
A flat strip's a big strip.
Essentially, any change in price level is going to be purely inflationary. It's just going to impact price because output can change no more. Essentially, it's a
no.
In order to show you this properly, as per usual, you know we go in on open board. So let's go there one time so we can show you what this long-run aggregate supply curve looks like. Your LRAS curve is the simplest thing ever seen in your life. It is a simple vertical curve. Straight, in the words of Bruno Mars, straight up and down. What is important about this curve? Well, first of all, if you think back to our short-run aggregate supply curve for classical economics look like this. Now, what I need you to consider here is a change in price level. Consider P1 and let's consider going to P2 here, right? P1 and P2. In our short run, when we change price level, and let me use red now, P1 would have given you this amount of output because suppliers or the country is willing to supply this amount of goods and services, whatever it be, call that 10. And at P2 in the short run, they were willing to provide this amount, 30, no doubt. However, that relationship has now changed when it comes to the long run. What happens in the long run is once you have that price level, despite whatever you do, it is not going to change. As you can see, price level went up, yet our output remains at Y star. Sometimes you may see this referred to as YFE, which is just referring to the full employment level of output. All the resources are already being used to maximum effort, plus ultra, bro. There's no more to give. So any change in price does not get you more output. In a sense, your output in this case is more or less determined by your resources rather than how much money you have to spend. What is the natural level your country is able to produce, and I'm there. And imagine if you're already giving your all and then somebody says, well, hey, we need some more.
Bruh.
You can't provide anything. So such is the theory of the long-run aggregate supply curve. And basically that's it. That's understanding your aggregate supply curve. Now this is based on some assumptions. So let's discuss those. Let's look at the assumptions. Number one is they're assuming full employment. All resources, all factors of production are being used efficiently and effectively to produce resources. That's one. Two, we understand price level has no impact on the volume of or the level of total output, the level of real output. As you change price level, real output not changing. It doesn't care anymore. Three, remember some of our initial assumptions. The fact that prices and wages are flexible. This is key as we're going into the next discussion that we're going to have. 4, unemployment does not exist unless you're talking about frictional, which you need to look up, or structural, which you need to look up again. And of course, anyway, I'm going to leave you to look those up. And it makes sense in this context. And that's all the valuable assumptions that we have. Now we need to look at one of the key things, and it's highly possible that you may see this in your exams. Don't let it confuse you. Now we get to see how classical economics adjusts the economy back to its long-run level of output all the time. Now we're going to look at how the long-run and the short-run aggregate supply curves interact.
combination.
And to do that, we need to go to open board. So let's go there. Looking at the diagram, please do not get confused. We are just beginning. So the first curves you want to look at are the ones in red. You have your long-run aggregate supply curve, where we have our full employment level of output being produced, as well as the fact that we have our aggregate demand curve here and our aggregate supply curve intersecting at this point, right? At this particular price level, let's call this P1 and YF. Great. Assuming the government stimulates the economy through some expansionary thing, let's say increasing government spending or a decrease in taxation, this is going to carry up the C component of aggregate demand as well as the G component of aggregate demand. If you remember correctly, those two things combined results in a shift of the aggregate demand curve outward. Because of that, you now have a new price level and a new level of output. New level of output corresponds to this guy here. Call this Y2. And your new price level is going to correspond to P2. Think about it. As prices go up, the price level goes up. Persons are going to need more money to afford their basic baskets of goods and services. To afford their same lifestyle, they're going to be paying more for goods and services. And because of that, this process is going to bid wages up. Persons are going to need more money. And because of that as well, when wages go up, what happens to aggregate supply in the economy? If you owned a business and the cost of labor went up, what happens to your supply curve? Well, if you guessed correctly, congrats. This aggregate supply curve is going to shift. To the left, to the left. What happens now? You have a reduction in your real output. It's going to go backwards and go leftward. And you also have an increase in your price level once more to P3. The economy, because there is this fixed level of production, the fixed factors of production, it needs to go back to its full employment level of output. However, it does so due to the fact that government would have stimulated the economy. This results in a short-run change in the output, no doubt, but in the long run, it goes back to full employment level of output, and more so at a higher price level. Which is why we say in the short run, you're able to boost production a bit beyond your full employment level of output. But in the long run, it always goes back to YFE. You always have to go back there because that's your literal maximum level of output. That's the gist of this. You need to understand that the economy will always go back there. That's all on this particular objective.
Hey, yo.